Hi and welcome everybody to the SUSE QE Tools workshop. Today we will talk about the roadmap and the tasks that we have done and the plan going forward. We did the last of this roadmap presentations on the 13th of December. What I can do now is I can take a look roughly into that query, those within less than 60 days, or to be specific, I can say anything that was resolved on the 13th or after that. So in total, we had completed, let me project, we had completed in this time period 127 tickets. If you consider that this is a bit less than 60 days, that meets our usual estimates, even though we had Christmas vacation period in the middle, where normally we would have around 2 tickets resolved per calendar day. There's a big section in OpenQA infrastructure. There's another big section in the OpenQA project. If you check the second page, then we will find that there are some minor in OpenQA tests. This is mostly then support tickets where we help to identify what's the problem with specific tests. Sometimes also test specific infrastructure that needs to be looked at. Some SUSE internal tickets, but you can see this is only a limited share. We have 2 public tickets. One I can mention is the reconsider higher work in progress limit. That's like team organizational, team internal. We are looking at having efficient processes within our team. That is the SUSE QE Tools team. And because we have recently gained newcomers in the team, we also did increase our work in progress limit so that more tickets can be worked on in parallel and are actually in the state in progress then. We might also want to reconsider that with, if you want to restructure the team to lower it to make sure that, we're always getting things done. But so far, it seems to work out nicely. The second thing is about the maintenance of packages within Devil languages Perl. There's one ticket related to that about fixed order setup handling in cpan-spec, but I'm not going into too much detail about that. But I would like to point out that there is a separate talk on the 21st of March this year, so in roughly 5 weeks, by Tinita about how we automatically update Perl modules in Devil languages Perl. So she's covering that aspect in much more detail. Then if we take a look into the OpenQA project, we can see that we have multiple of those tickets which look to be very similar. That is increasing the code coverage. That focuses on the project of Auth Audience. That has already proven to be quite helpful because we uncovered some minor issues, but also it helps to introduce new features and other changes on top when we know that we have this safety net of a good testing coverage. And we can see here we have a batch which is as 99%. So we are nearly there. It's quite in reach to reach the goal of having 100% code coverage, but it's actually only statement coverage. So every single statement would be covered by automated tests. You can see here what is missing. There's some 100 lines missing in script and some 46 lines in consoles. That is currently actively being worked on. And if you can see, if you take a look at the chart, you can see that there's on a very high level, we are still having a quite steady increase in 3 months and trend of plus 3%. And I'm happy about that part. So, and by the way, that those are low tickets. So we don't treat that with high priority, but maybe members of the team like the opportunity to look into the code into more detail while increasing the coverage, learning the code, learning the processes, getting acquainted with what the software should actually do also on a more low level for different backends, different functionalities of all sorts. So it had multiple benefits to look into that. Now going back to page number 1. So what we can see here is, let me first cover also OpenQA project and then OpenQA infrastructure. So we had we have automatic submission pipelines which also care about OS Audience, OpenQA, and other packages to automatically submit them after every single update also to OpenSUSE Factory. And part of that is also the Osado development dependencies. There was a bug report which we received that there was one Perl dependency which was obsoleted, and that package still depended on the old. We wanted to change that, and then we realized that actually there is a problem in updating that. Now that's all working fine again, and we can see the effects. Let me show you the main development project of OBS is here on OBS build OpenSUSE.org. Devil OpenQA, where we have multiple packages, among them OpenQA, OS Audience, but also OS Audience is the OpenSUSE depths, which I just mentioned. This package is automatically updated from Git. So every single commit that reaches the master in the main repository on GitHub automatically triggers an update. Same as for OpenQA, OS Audience, and others. The definition can be seen here in the service file where we see like we check out that. But if we want to submit that to OpenSUSE Factory, then this is not acceptable to directly submit a package which dynamically picks up code from an untrusted external source. That's why we need to prepare those packages differently for submission. And we do that. That can be seen in the subprojects. So those are all temporary projects which are created for every single pull request. But what we do then is we have a new project which is called testing, and in testing we create those packages and prepare them. So you can see that in there they are basically a copy of the package from Devil OpenQA, but we don't rebuild them. We just use the package as is. And after we tested them, for that we use OpenQA in OpenQA test, then the packages are moved to the second project, which is called tested. And tested is then the staging step for OpenSUSE Factory. That's why you see all those links. So if you have a package here, then it looks different because then it has this unique specific binary submitted, and also the services are all disabled. And this package links to OpenSUSE Factory. And with that, we have all those packages which are created automatically. Even submit requests are created automatically to Factory. What else? Yeah, I mentioned OpenQA and OpenQA tests. So this is why whenever there's a problem happening, we take a look into that quickly because we care about the quality. We care about those tests to show us that OpenQA is actually stable and can be used from a user's perspective, but also to support our automatic submission pipelines, which I mentioned. Then regarding automated submissions and such, well, normally we have the SUSE internal instance OpenQA SUSE DE, and that one should only be updated whenever we deploy changes on O3 as our staging instance for OSD successfully. Like if there are no problems on OpenQA OpenSUSE.org, then we go ahead and also deploy an OpenK SUSE. Well, this check didn't work, so actually there was a version also deployed on OpenK SUSE. No harm was done, but still that's not how it is intended. And I can show you the fix. The big problem was that the code was doing something like this, which is bash. So what we do there is we have a retry loop, and we have a command in there which checks for the build results, which is simulated here by the false command, and then we do a retry. The problem is, well, if all retries are exhausted, then this will end with success because this part here will actually succeed. We could use a more sophisticated call, something like this, or, and I think that's even better and easier, we just rely on a tool which does that for us more properly, which is retry. If you don't know retry, it's an application which I started to develop and then other helped to contribute. Very simple, a rather simple bash script, but even with simple bash script, you sometimes can get things wrong. This is why it makes sense to use that one package, which is properly tested, doing what it should. And now we can simplify a loop like this into just saying just retry. And this will properly handle that there are retries with configurable sleep times, retry periods, even exponential sleep is possible, but in the end, do what is expected regarding ending the execution. Now, next, what I would like to mention is a spike solution, prevent unauthorized OpenK assets download. The idea here is that there might be certain use cases, in our case within SUSE, that's the common criteria compliance, that we want to enable the use of certain workers which we want to ensure that we can trust them. In before, it was that OpenKA workers can need to authenticate with OpenKA, but assets could be downloaded from any unauthorized access. And we looked into a spike solution to prevent that. So this is the ticket here. And the follow-up to that was the actual implementation, because it turned out that this is feasible to do. So we also did this ticket here, which is about prevent unauthorized OpenKA asset download, to finish the real part. And that ended up with a feature, a configurable feature in OpenKA. So let me show you. There was an improvement for loan job. Oh, yeah, right. I think the actual feature was already part of the time-boxed spike solution. So we managed to have that merged, which is this pull request 6082, add config option to restrict asset downloads to logged in users. And what that means is that an instant OpenKA instance admin can set require for assets to 1, and then the authentication is required to access assets. It certainly comes with caveats, because then, well, and we also observed that after we did yet another follow-up to also enable that on OpenK SUSE. It's not enabled on OpenK OpenSUSE.org, not needed there. And we appreciate if users actually do download assets like, at some Tumbleweed testing asset or some custom built image that is only reachable as a test asset from there. And for OpenK SUSE, there were multiple solutions which were followed, which could be followed, like you could pass user and a password to curl or wget. There were some use case identified where we said, like, okay, it might make sense to also offer an option to OpenKA CLI or OpenKA clone job That's something which we haven't done yet, and we will think about how we could implement something in the future. But still, it has a feature switch, so we can configure that based on our needs. There was one bigger update in QEMU, which removed some obsolete code parts, and that caused then OS audience code still expecting functionality from old QEMU versions to fail, especially when it was about like snapshots, QEMU VM snapshots in the QCar file, which are used to revert to an earlier state. If a test module fails, it goes back, loads from the snapshot, and then continues. And we fixed that, or mostly it was Guillaume Gardet doing the initial work. And then we followed up to clean this up a bit to make sure that we are future-proof. There's one problem which I would like to mention, which this is a rather new ticket number, but there was actually an issue which already appeared in the past in similar sounding issues, and we could never properly get a grasp on it, which was that you would get bugged by the symptom failed to find available port address already in use, meaning there's some leftover process still hogging like a socket or the resources. And we finally could nail this down and fix that, which was actually done in a dependency package, which is Mojo ILO read write process. Let me see if I can find the coding request. Okay, there was a revert, so it was a bit complicated to get that right. The initial one was fix handling process group, and initial process is not running anymore. So not all processes of part of a process group were properly cleaned up on a shutdown. That was fixed, even though there was a need to do multiple follow-ups and some reverts, but in the end it wasn't. It was okay for us to say, well, we know the change and we deliberately rolled it out, and then we could revert it and take our time to think about a proper solution. And then in the end, we managed to find a solution which is quite stable. We had a problem in upgrading our workers to OpenSUSE Leap 15.6, including Linux kernel version 6.4 and higher. And it seems to be a problem in conjunction with FirewallD and when having a lot of tab interfaces, which we do have, which prolongs the boot period like to a range of more than 20 minutes, sometimes even 1.5 hours, and multiple servers, obviously, services time out during that process or crash because processes don't respond. We have looked into that. We have reported upstream bugs about that, and what we are running now as a workaround is actually custom NF-table firewall definitions and not using FirewallD itself. Then what else? So this one shows up in bold because I'm a designer. I just fixed that yesterday. There was a problem with OpenK Investigate. OpenK Investigate automatically triggers when the according hook is configured on all unreviewed OpenQA test failures, and it triggers up to 4 jobs. Like, is it reproducible? We can find that out with a retry job. Does the last good test code work? We can find that out by going back to the state of last good test. Does the last good build of the product that we want to test work? We can find that out by going back to the last good build, as well as a combination of both to find out any differences in the infrastructure, which is the last good test and build job. And that one tries to trigger on the very same exact worker class combination that was the case for the original failure. But if you have a parallel cluster, then all those jobs are triggered with that worker class. And that means that there might be just a single worker instance, but always 2 or more jobs that you want to schedule to be run in parallel. So this can never work. And I want to show the solution here, though it's also a bit low level and technical. So what I did is fix the last good test and build for a cluster job just yesterday with the help of Marius. And what we do there is use a feature where we can clone jobs and say there are certain settings which only apply to some jobs of the cloned cluster. So in that case, we say set worker class, or we can see it in the test code. Before we had worker class with all the classes for all the involved jobs. What we want instead is that only the origin job clone has this assigned. If it's a single job, then it doesn't actually have any effect there. If it's a bigger job, then if it's a cluster, then this will only apply to the clone of the original job and not any of the siblings in the parallel cluster. Now, what else? So we had, I mentioned about the using only authenticated access to assets, and we use Nginx as a proxy in front so that we don't serve all the assets like RPM files, ISO files, QCOR files, and such over the modulysis process from OpenGA, but use Nginx, which is more efficient and also serves other purposes. Which means that also Nginx needs to understand how to allow access to such assets only after authentication, which is part of that. Another related ticket is prevent unauthorized OpenGA asset download, which I presented already. Let me see if I can find something more visual. Again, we have more code coverage changes here. Nope, unfortunately, nothing with a screenshot or anything like that here. Well, okay, there's one thing which was about the live view test, which is like a really trivial change here, because what I did there is I changed the description text on the live view page to clarify that what is included there in the serial output is actually not only serial.txt but also all different kinds of serial terminal outlooks. But that's about it. Let's look into the infrastructure block, and we have here well, let's start with the first one which jumps into the eye, which is the web UI ended up with 502 bad gateway from Nginx. It turned out what we had already observed multiple times in the past, that sometimes our OpenGA ini file is corrupted and incorrectly written. We use Salt to manage those machines and manage the changes there. And there seem to be certain conditions under which configuration files are incompletely written, or even with like invalid characters, meaning like a string of 0 bytes or something within the config file. And I already tried to reproduce that in a testing environment. I could not reproduce it there. I was running like thousands of salt state apply while putting the system under stress by running stress ng in the background, while in parallel in a loop repeatedly trying to install a package or moving config files around. Never could I reproduce the problem, but in production we already found that problem 3 times, plus also on 2 different hosts. and we are still looking for what the reason could be. This one was basically about finding the issue, handling the issue on the superficial level, as in bring back the services, even though this root cause itself isn't fixed yet. What else? Then multiple more improvements to salt, some alert fixes, and I would say that's about it. So that's enough for the task that we have resolved. Now, if we go back to our how we work page, let's start with the top level view. We have two sagas which are our priority here. One is to support the common criteria compliance of the main SUSE data center in Prague, called Prague 2, while ensuring business continuity. We are progressing well there. I highlighted one related feature here, which is about the preventing unauthorized asset access. On the way going forward, we will look into streamlining that, make it allow and hand out more tools to the SUSE internal users, how to be able to still access assets in tests as well as manually when doing it from the outside as necessary. We are also doing a lot of infrastructure work there, like actually physically moving machines to a different data center, depending on the purpose of those testing hardware, like if it's bare metal testing hardware used for sleep maintenance testing and such. We are also looking into the deployment of tooling so that we are ensuring that we have all tools under full SUSE control. That could mean that we might introduce intermediate steps for certain software to not only directly install packages from OBS, but rather take the detour to sync the changes to the SUSE internal build service and build packages on there with an additional review step and only deploy from there after additional verification. And the second saga is the good old full version control awareness within OpenQA. And for that, I can show you. You can also see it here in the done bar. This is now a realistic reflection of what is actually missing. We can see that we have 9 subtasks open, and I'm confident that there will not be that many more after those 9, so that we can conclude the saga hopefully within this year, unless they are like really surprising facts blocking us. But we can see that the according tickets, all of them are in ready, so all of them are in the backlog. Most of them are blocked. One is in feedback and one is in progress, which is this one and this one. That's fine because they are, well, they are blocked by this before we enable again the automatic OpenGate Git clone by default. We want to solve one more thing about an like rather an inefficiency of how minion jobs are created to ensure Git updates for every single job, but then most of the jobs are part of one build or bigger clusters. So, you would only need to run the Git update once, but you need to ensure that it actually happens and resolve all the dependencies and synchronize for those minion jobs. So this is why we are exploring different alternatives there to understand how we should go forward. One solution that was suggested is to have an actual new state or substate for a job, which would come before scheduled. And we are in discussion if that needs to be reflected up to the UI level or if that can stay internal as a substate. After that is done, then we want to enable automatic OpenQA Git clone by default in the upstream project. We want to ensure that this happens on OSD, and after that we can bump the version number and just call it OpenQA 5. In parallel, there's also a pull request from an external contributor, 5175, and that one is being polished and cleaned up and extended with testing by colleagues from our team. So from Clark, the submission was to use needles from correct ref or needles there, depending on the specific needles Git repository, separate Git repositories, how to reference that. And that was originally coming from 2023, but you can see that this is actively being worked on with very recent updates. Just 12 minutes ago. So the work is going on there. We are supporting there to make sure that this is in a mergeable, stable state. Again, as much as possible with a feature switch so that this can be enabled but doesn't have to impact the use cases when we are not so sure about the impact or the performance impact there. Now, after this, we can resolve this saga, and we can continue again with another saga, which you have already seen being worked on. But I put that into the next step, which would be about OpenQA for SUSE customers, including higher quality, which implicitly also means that we are ensuring higher code coverage. So that's why we are doing all those steps. A short look into our actual backlog. We right now have 55 tickets in our backlog, and the feedback tickets I mentioned is about exploring alternatives to improve the non-transaction creation of many jobs for the Git updates to ensure that there's always an according updated Git repository of tests and needles for every job. Obviously, there are also always reactive work for being able to maintain our infrastructures that we maintain both for O3 and OSD. It's about OSD. What is currently being in progress is the pull request from OpenQA 5175 that I mentioned. But there's also some organizational tasks coming up. For example, there is the OpenSUSE conference on June 26 to 28, where we want, let me see, that shows up. Yep. So we want to organize our contribution or our participation in that. And timely linked to that, we are thinking about planning SUSE QE Tools team internal in-place workshop for this SUSE fiscal year. So like after the conference or something to bring many members of the team together. And that's what I want to mention here. What else is there? Okay, some more reactive infra work, trying to upgrade missing workers. And then, ensuring to bring machines into production again, which had been temporarily disabled due to network changes related to command criteria. That's still ongoing work. And last look into new. Okay, maybe not that relevant right now. And that's about it. Cool. So I'm done with that part. Are there any questions or notes from the audience?
From my side, the topic to maintain the package for OSADO dependency and all pipeline was quite interesting and maybe deserve its own workshop call.
I see. Were you impacted by that? Like, did you encounter the problem on a Tumbleweed installation maybe?
Yes, I would like also to... It's related to the call that we did to start developing with OpenQA. We have like two of them. And yes, I maybe would like to contribute to this pipeline, like maybe providing some new idea about how to test them. And I made some experiment with Docker and Dockerfile.
Yeah.
What is my experiment was like, what is really needed from a vanilla tumbleweed
Yes.
following the
That's a good
documentation,
test.
no?
Yeah.
And so, and I did some experiment with Dockerfile manually, and then now I thinking where I can put them. Is this pipeline is a place in this pipeline you described for this kind of validation tests?
Right. So what I can recommend you is one workshop topic, which is from the 8th of March 2024, automated OpenK test to verify OpenK multi-machine setup. Because the OpenK tests are part of these, of this chain. But besides that, I think it's a good idea if we discuss this topic of the pipelines in another workshop session again. So,
Good.
yeah, I guess like on the 18th of April. I hope that works for you. And then I can present it and then we can discuss way to go forward. Okay?
Good. Yes.
Cool. So we will do that. Then the last point is the next session will be on the 21st of February in 2 weeks. And this is when Robert Richardson will talk with us about how to contribute to OpenKA based on example. So similar to what we had last time about like joining OS Audience development. This is about joining OpenKA development as a first-time contributor. Until then, thank you and goodbye.